Hello all. Welcome to Success Channel. Today we will be discussing on force majeure. So let's welcome our esteemed speakers. We have Mr. Atul Jule. He is General Counsel, Compliance Officer and Company Secretary for Sessionler India Private Limited. He has more than 22 years experience in litigation, non-litigation, mergers, acquisitions, joint ventures, etc. We have Sundar Ramanathan. He is co-founder of Sarvada Legal and advocates on record of Supreme Court of India. His firm has consolidated experience of 100 plus years. He is expert in NCLT matters, competition commission matters, money laundering, and FEMA, as well as consumer matters. We have Mr. Sachin Daga. He is managing partner Daga Legal LLP. His firm has more than 70 years consolidated experience in real estate, Companies Act, banking, insolvency, etc. We have Shweta Bharti. She is senior partner Hammurabi and Solomon Partners. Her firm has more than 100 years of consolidated experience. She has experience in mediation, arbitration, and litigation. We also have Mr. Rohit Salwan. He is experienced legal head. He is having more than 18 years of experience into litigation, non-litigation recovery of amounts due. I'm Abhijit Tople. I'm head of legal Geo Financial Services. I have 20 years experience, out of which 5 years in sales and 15 years as an in-house counsel as well as an advocate. So let us start. My first question is to Shweta. So Shweta, what is actually a force majeure?
Actually, this discussion has started happening, more now. We used to have this discussion on what is force majeure and how do we interpret the clauses. I think the history of it is quite old, but then it's in the pandemic times that we started talking about force majeure even more, and the number of opinions that I would have given on this aspect is also innumerable, because that is something which is coming in different ways, in different manners, as a query. So if you understand the word force majeure, it means, what does it mean? Let us understand that, because it's not a English word as such. It means superior force. So there is something which is, above us, who's guiding the entire actions. So when you talk about force majeure clause in contracts, then what does it mean? That parties to the contract will not be able to be held liable for any delay or failure in their performance if such delay or failure is beyond their reasonable control. And it will include, though not limited to, the act of God, government action, fire, war, and now we have started talking about pandemic and epidemic, natural disasters and natural calamities, the act of terrorism, or any such major upheaval which impacts your ability to perform your part of the contract. So if you look at the term force majeure, there is another word called vis majeure. Vis majeure is act of God. So it is limited in terms of its interpretation, while force majeure is more encompassing in terms of definition. So vis majeure means that it is an overwhelming, unpreventable event caused exclusively by the force of nature, like earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, tornadoes. So all of that is an act of God. So the contours and purport and intent of force majeure is much wider than vis majeure. And obviously, as I mentioned, that encompasses not only the act of God, but also other factors which are beyond the reasonable control of the parties. So that is what force majeure is. We can talk about the legality of the force majeure a little more in detail when we start discussing about it, but that is what it is.
Yeah, Sundar, your view, please.
I think Shwetaji is very eloquently put the entire contour of what is a force majeure and what all probably are ingredients, or what probably are commonly known force majeures that we see normally in contract. But principally, I just want to make one slight maybe distinction at least, is when you're looking at force majeure, it is something which is a means of discharge, as Shwetaji said, as per the terms of the contract. So you have, in terms of the Indian legal jurisprudence, you have Section 32 of the Contract Act, which deals with the entire sphere or gamut insofar as force majeure is concerned. So if a contract has a stipulation dealing with force majeure, it identify what is a force majeure, what are the circumstances in which the force majeure can be acted upon so that the party is excused of the contract. On the other hand, let's assume if a contract does not stipulate a force majeure clause by which a party can be excused, there is Section 56 of the Contract Act, which deals with a doctrine of frustration. So when you look at the Indian law, in so the legal structure at least, you have Section 32 on one hand and Section 56 on the other hand, which deal with the entire gamut insofar as impossibility of performance of contracts is concerned. One other aspect we probably want to touch upon is, as Shweta ji said, it is more and more something that we're talking about during the pandemic times. And normally when someone talks about impossibility, we immediately think, yes, it is impossible for me to do something. So why, or what is the relevance really for talking about force majeure? So just to understand the background as to how or why we have force majeure, when you look at the early common law really did not provide for any kind of an excuses. So if there is a stipulation in a contract, it had to be necessarily performed. And there was really no excuse, even if there was an impossibility. So slowly the English codes over a period of time developed, or rather from the French, it came from the French code, as Shweta ji said. It is not really an English term, something which came from the French code and was ultimately imbibed in the English common law, wherein the code said that there is an implied term that if you really cannot perform a contract which is because of a supervening impossibility or a supervening illegality, you will not be in a position to perform it, and therefore there is a need for some kind of an implied term to be read into the contracts, and hence a party can be excused when something is not or which is not capable of being performed by the party concerned. So that's probably something that in addition that I wanted to add it. Otherwise, I think Shweta ji has very eloquently covered the entire gamut of what is force majeure, at least in terms of contracts and what are the commonly used examples.
Atul, you have any view on?
No, actually, both of them have covered force majeure term. I will say only one thing is that now force majeure everybody knows better than lawyers. That's what I want to tell. That's all.
Sachin?
Sure.
Yeah, I'll just as fantastically summarized by Shweta, Sundar, and Atulji. I will just add, because in India, force majeure is not actually defined in the in the acts. So we are taking shelter under Section 32 of the Indian Contract, as Mr. Sundar mentioned. So therefore, we have to when we are dealing with force majeure, we need to look into one very, very important fact, that this is a contractual remedy. So when I say it's a contractual remedy, then whomsoever is defining the clause in their agreement or analyzing or checking this clause, this becomes very important, how you put this force majeure clause in your contract. So as Sundar was mentioning rightly that, how what you're putting, if it is impossible to perform or impracticable to perform. So one side people are writing in a very vague manner. There are other people who are explicitly putting all those words which forms the part of the contract. We can deal later in a discussion that what are those scenarios where force majeure is put. But in this COVID situation, lot of people have realized that pandemic was never a part of force majeure clause. So then they realized that yes, we have missed out. Big law firms, big people who are very, very good in contracts, they have also mixed that pandemic was never there. Now, in such cases, yes, use them generis people apply that that you will interpret the law in such a way that this can be a part. However, there are various courts, high courts, including Supreme Courts, they have mentioned that force majeure has to be explicitly defined, that how your contract is going to be impossible, how it is going to be impracticable, how you are going to invoke, what kind of notices you are going to send. So those things people will have to keep in mind now, especially after this pandemic. This is a learning for all of us, that these pointers, these clauses should be very, very well covered while we are mentioning force majeure clause.
Yeah. My question is to Atul. Can technical failure of a software be treated as force majeure? Usually we can see those certain point for software failure in force majeure.
See, we started with the force majeure. First is, force majeure cannot be used to shy away from the responsibility. People actually thought that it can be used as a defense to shy away from the responsibility. So in technical failure of the software, force majeure cannot be used because it is a short-term technical failure. I can understand if it is banned, then it can be a force majeure. and then we have to find out in that case also we have to find out the alternative. As the court decisions are there, we have to find out, and then if there is no alternative, then only force majeure will apply. I also wanted to add, actually, as Sachin ji said, it was not the law firm's failure, particularly on the force majeure, not mentioning contract in the force majeure. The problem is that we are actually going in a small, short contract, scripts contract, in that we are deleting the general clauses, and in major contract, force majeure clause was deleted because there was no reason, unless there is a big contracts and all where the each contractual term is verified and all. So to answer, technical failure of the short software will not be act as a force majeure.
Yeah, Sundar, your view, please.
I agree with Atulji. I'll just probably elaborate a few additional reasons as to why I feel you cannot invoke force majeure insofar as technical software, or technical problems or glitches in software is concerned. See, the contracts, on one hand, you're supposed to perform or provide your software, etc., in a proper manner. Now, force majeure normally applies, as courts are well, in a very limited and narrow sphere, and it is not possible merely because there is going to be some kind of a difficulty for you to perform your contract to avoid or excuse yourself from performing the terms of the contract. So normally when you're providing a software, you're supposed to provide a software so that it runs effectively. And if there are some normal glitches, etc., which is normally expected in any kind of a contract, if there is some kind of a glitch or any kind of a problem, that is something which normally businesses do understand that there could be some kind of a problem. But when there is something which is contemplated by parties saying this is going to be a glitch or this is going to be some kind of a technical problem, etc., you cannot then say it is something which is beyond my control, because it is something that parties have in their reasonable frame of mind contemplated that there could be some kind of a problem. So if it does happen, and if there are going to be some significant implications for the user of the software, he'll definitely be able to say that there is a breach by the other side, and the other side cannot invoke force majeure to say that this is something which is beyond my control, because it is something that you should fix normally. And something, number one, to begin with, you'll have to actually provide software without any glitches or technical problems. If there is some kind of a glitch, you're supposed to rectify it. And you cannot come back and say that I cannot even perform my terms of the contract. If it is something, when you say it is impossible for me to perform, then probably you can try to take the safe harbor of a force majeure. But otherwise, I agree with Atulji. I don't think you can probably try to invoke force majeure or the doctrine of frustration for that matter if there is no clause provided in the contract, and claim the safe harbor of force majeure for technical difficulties and so on.
Yeah, Sachin, your view.
Yes, very rightly defined by Sundar and Atulji. So therefore, it has to be a part of a contract wherein it has to be specifically mentioned that what kind of technical failure in a software can become force majeure. Therefore, time is in a sense, you have to define time, that until what time it's required to say that it may form a part of force majeure. But as I said, it's a contractual remedy. So if you are putting this in the contract, that such kind of technical failure will be a part of force majeure if something happens of some kind, which is like impractical, not in the general course, routine course, that there is a failure, so therefore I'm mitigating my risk by saying that it is a force majeure, and therefore we cannot perform the contract. No, they have to prove, the burden of proof is on the other side, that such and such problem which is beyond anybody's control, which was not thought at the time of preparing this contract, and therefore it will become a part of that force majeure. Then only we can put it under this force majeure. Otherwise, technical failures cannot be a part of force majeure clause.
But then, it's good to have that in our force majeure clause, basically. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are an IT company, you need to have that.
Right. Sweta, your view, please.
I think I'm in agreement with all the three speakers on this, and my view is absolutely identical, that unless it is provided for in the agreement, you cannot, take refuge under a contingency contract or under the frustration of contract. So this is absolutely correct.
Right. Sundar, I have a question for you now. Is COVID a force majeure, first of all? And then we would like to understand few scenarios wherein the parties face a lot of issues during this COVID because of this force majeure clauses.
So generally speaking, I would think yes, COVID is. I would think it is a force majeure. It is something which is beyond the reasonable control. I think anyone who's been part of this generation has never seen something of the nature of COVID or the coronavirus, and it has really put the entire global economy to a halt and businesses to a halt. And we've also seen various lockdowns being imposed by the government because of that. So therefore, I would definitely think yes, COVID is a force majeure because it is something which is reasonably beyond the control of any other parties concerned. In terms of examples, whether COVID has been declared to be a force majeure and what are the issues that have been taken up by courts, I'll probably, because there are 4 speakers, I'll probably take up one small instance so that all of us have an opportunity to discuss different cases. And maybe I can come back at a later point of time. So one case which all of us would have heard and read in terms of cases and also in the newspapers is the Halliburton versus Vedanta matter, wherein the primary issue was for stopping the invocation of bank guarantees because of the COVID scenario. So the contract, as we're aware, is a contract wherein Vedanta had given a contract to Halliburton for developing their oil wells, etc. in Rajasthan. And the contract was being performed. There were timelines specifically given, etc. Halliburton was not able to perform, at least from the facts, the contract within the stipulated time period. And extensions have been given, etc. And just before the lockdown is imposed by the National Disaster Management Authority, they invoked the ground of force majeure, saying that they're not able to perform the contract because of this force majeure scenario. Initially, there was an ad interim stay that was granted by the High Court, but then the High Court considered the matter on merits. The High Court said that COVID definitely is a scenario of force majeure, and they had a definitive conclusion on that. But the court also said there has to be a causal link between COVID and your non-performance obligations. Merely because COVID is there does not mean you can seek that as an excuse, or a force majeure is there, you cannot seek that as an excuse. The force majeure should be something which directly impacts on your ability to perform the obligations. So in this case, the court said that the obligations are not being performed for a long time and they were not able to meet their obligations. They were able to seek extensions over a period of time. So the fault was of the party concerned itself in not being able to meet the obligations. And merely because COVID came, that cannot become a reason for you to take the refuge of COVID and say that therefore this is a force majeure. So that is probably one instance which I thought I could give an instance where there is force majeure. The court accepted that COVID is a force majeure, but merely because an instant or an event is a force majeure by itself will not excuse you from performing the terms of the contract. And of course, over a number of years, courts, the Supreme Court has clearly held that when you look at force majeure, it has to be interpreted in a very narrow manner because effect otherwise has to be given to the terms and obligations of the parties in the contract. So that is one example which I thought I could give.
Atul, your view, please.
Yeah, force majeure, yeah, agree. He has covered very nicely. So Sundar has covered very nicely. And I would like to give one more example of the force majeure where Supreme Court has given the decision. That is leave and license agreements. And particularly it was pertaining to lawyers only. which they wanted actually the force majeure to not to pay the rental. But yes, there was a force majeure. Whether COVID is a force majeure, I think generally yes, because parties want to perform, but they are not allowed to leave their home. So which is not in their control. So force majeure, COVID is a force majeure, no doubt about that. But problem is that whether it is applies to your contract, that depends on what are the contractual terms and conditions, what are the deliverables, and whether you can deliver that. First 2 or 3 months, as I say, according to me, it was a complete closure, and there was definitely there was. But after that, it is opened up, and then people are demanding the deliveries. So it depends on your contract. Even government has issued a circular also in Feb 18, 2020 that procurements will be subjected to force measures uh, because of the COVID. And that is extended up to September, and after that also it is extended. So generally speaking, COVID-19 is a force majeure condition, but whether it applies to your contract depends on the terms and conditions as well as deliverable under the contract.
Sachin?
Yeah, so very well, 2 case laws have been cited over here. I will add one case law of Mumbai High Court that became a landmark judgment again by Justice G.S. Patel. wherein the government of Maharashtra had imposed the lockdown. And Atulji must be knowing this case wherein the Lonavala highway, so there is a food court which has been given on lease to the RBC, the company. So they had filed the petition over there in the High Court. So they had asked that the government himself has posed the lockdown and it was impossible to perform the contract. So how you expect me to pay the rent? So the findings were very interesting. So what Justice Patel said that we are in the gambit of law. So my sympathies are definitely with them, with RBC. But in the contract, if it is not mentioned very properly that this part would become the part of force majeure, then he can do very little to to give them any relief. So it can be postponed because government has taken a lot of they have sent a lot of guidelines and basis that yes, it's a pandemic. They are saying people to deal it humanly. All things are there, but you cannot shirk away with your responsibility that you will not be able to pay that rent. So either you renegotiate with the party. All these things are there. But in law, if you will see, if there is nothing in the contract, none of the court can do anything about it. Yes, there are a lot of efforts which have been taken by the government. So moratorium is there in leave-in license, in sale purchase agreement. So all these people have sent, the ministries have sent different guidelines. And so there were disaster management act, epidemic act. All these things were there. So you can you can get some immunity, but you cannot say that we will the court will allow that you will not pay the rent and etc. So you will have to pay. The sympathies are there, but you will have to abide by them.
Shweta?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Halliburton case was one of the first cases on this issue, and it really laid down, in terms of clarity on this. And Atulji has also rightly mentioned with respect to the government memorandum. I think it was of February 2020. You mentioned 18th February 2020. So around that time. So I think in that office memorandum of the government, I think there is a clear clarity that the COVID-19 pandemic will be considered as natural calamity, and force majeure clause may be invoked where necessary, so far as the government contracts are concerned. So, but it does give an indication of how it is to be treated in these kind of circumstances. And besides Halliburton and the Bombay High Court judgment that Sachin has mentioned, there is one more judgment that I would also want to refer to, which is Orissa High Court. It also had in one of the cases, I think it was Anand Chandra Behra case that recently, where there was some guidance on the causal link between the force majeure event and the resulting situation was discussed in detail, and there was a finding with respect to the fact that even if there is an accident which may be an act of God, but if it is resulted directly from a natural disaster or a natural cause without human intervention, in that case it is true that the human and the natural agency may cooperate to produce the results, but the immediate and the direct cause is the only factor to be looked into in determining whether the act is that of God or man. So I think it was there was some reference to some judgments of the English High Court also taken in that, where the ship was cast away in a tempest, and that would not have happened but for the act of the owner in sending the ship to the sea. But the loss is the act of God for all that matters. So I think that reference was drawn in order to give some kind of a direction. So I think it is it is true that there are issues there are different judgments in this regard. In fact, in one of the other instances where the performance of a contract, it may not have affected due to the COVID-19 pandemic, where like employees of an organization in a service industry who have to isolate themselves at home, but they can still continue to work. So depending on their nature of service, if you can argue that the employees can continue working from home and there is no impact on their delivery of service. So, or any such non-performance due to an economic downturn or other general business conditions resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic are not likely to be sufficient to seek, the excuse from performance of a contract on the ground of force majeure. So all of it has to be examined in totality, I guess.
Sachin, I have a question for you. Now, there is always a provision in force majeure clause that the one party will give, the party who is suffering force majeure will give notice to the other party. Now, what if the party fails to give the notice? whether that force majeure will be treated as force majeure or not?
It's a very interesting question, and I would like to quote the famous judgment of Madura courts, which has clearly defined. The Supreme Court has clearly defined the issue of notice, how it is to be sent, when it is to be sent. So what has happened in Madura court's judgment, that there was a clause 8.5 which specifically says a notice has to be sent in a specific manner in a specific time. So the respondent should have sent that notice. They have to prove that how this act was, beyond their control, and then in within the stipulated period of time. If the notice is not sent in the stipulated period of time, then it will not be treated as force majeure. This is a clear-cut Supreme Court judgment which was there, and therefore this notice is very, very important. They were supposed to send the notice, and they could not send the notice. And therefore this was one of the aspects. Then they had gone in the merits of the case, that what were the situation. Matlab Supreme Court has gone one step ahead, and then they saw that no, not only the notice, if they were seeing the conditions also, that those conditions were also against the RK Industries. So therefore notice is very important. And while anybody is drafting that clause or analyzing the clause, it should be noted that how this notice is going to be served, what are the ingredients of those notice, which will make uh, a particular incidence or the extraordinary event as force majeure. Unless and until it is there, court will not be able to help those parties.
Yeah, Sundar, your view, please.
I agree completely with Sachinji that for invoking force majeure, if the contract provides for a particular manner in which it has to be invoked in terms of issuing a notice, etc., that has to be definitely provided for. I think it goes unsaid, because as it is the discharge as per the terms of the contract. So the contract stipulates that the discharge has to follow a particular procedure that has to be necessarily followed. But just to show that there is a contrary view taken also, I would want to point out one judgment of the Delhi High Court. This is a case of MEP Infrastructure versus STMC, wherein the issue was about, it started before COVID time, but of course, naturally, a lot of other cases spilled into COVID time. This was about payment of toll that is collected by the petitioner, the supplier providing the toll services, etc., to STMC. It initially challenged the demand notice that was issued by STMC to it, and the court had passed some kind of an interim order saying that they'll have to pay a lump sum payment and then 3 payments and then a regular payment every month, every week rather. Specified sum had to be paid. And the matter actually spilled over to the COVID times when the payments had to be made. So the court said actually the 3 payments, the matter was kept on going. Like a lot of other matters that we see in courts, matter gets taken up, it gets again posted for another date, etc. And the court noticed that some payments are made, some payments are not made. So the court gave directions on a regular basis to make those payments. So and then it spilled over during the COVID time. One of the issues that was specifically taken up was on the issue of notice, because in that particular case, it had to do with the government, of course, notifying the COVID as a national disaster and the NDMA Act. But prior to that also, what had happened was the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways had issued a circular wherein they had considered COVID as a force majeure situation. And this was also relied upon by the party during the course of the proceedings. So the court said that because the ministry has already considered this as a force majeure situation, there is no need for invoking the notice. And they said that itself is sufficient. The notice was sent, as mentioned a little while earlier, sometime in February, 18th of February. And though the NDMA order was on 24th of March, the court said from the date of the order, wherein the circular rather, wherein the ministry had invoked it as a force majeure, it will come back from that particular day. And they said there is no need for a notice. So though it's a contrary view, I feel, however, as I said earlier, that I agree with what Sachinji said. I also feel when there is a stipulation in the contract which provides for a manner in which the force majeure has to be invoked, it has to be definitely invoked only in that particular manner and not otherwise. But however, there is a different view that has been taken by the courts, that it's a single judge's order that's now pending before the division bench. It has also been reserved for judgment. But that is just a contrary view that I wanted to point out and say, because probably the court was swayed by the circumstances. One, of course, the circular by the ministry itself notifying it as a force majeure. So by incidents or a fiction of law, they probably had considered that this is really a case of force majeure. There is no need to really invoke a situation such as this when the entire globe has been put to a halt. But I feel, however, despite the judgment, I definitely feel that invocation or the procedure in which force majeure has to be invoked has to be necessarily compliant.
Sachin? Sachin, you have any point on this?
Yeah, I
Hello?
I think my connection was unstable. Huh.
Yeah.
So yes, because of this extraordinary situation, there can be procedural judgments from the various high courts and Supreme Court. But however, the law is very settled that the as per the contract, notice has to be served, and therefore then only, because all these courts time and again they have said that the force majeure will be strictly construed by all the courts, and it has to be very, very specific. You cannot come out or refuse with the excuse that without mentioning you can go ahead. So law is for both the parties, and therefore that is the reason, since it's a contractual obligation, you need to more often you need to see that notice has to be proper. Why to get into some, at times you can get this relief, but more often than not you will not get relief unless it is served properly.
Shweta, now what happens when there is no force majeure clause in the agreement, and what is the solution in case there is no force majeure clause?
Right. So the one aspect that I wanted to touch upon is, when we were talking about the requirement to issue notice, we have to understand, and I'm just taking you a little back, and then I'll probably come to this question as well, is that there is a substantial law and there is a procedural law. So far as the substantial law is concerned, it only talks about, because in India we do not really have a law on force majeure. We derive the understanding from Section 32 and Section 56 of the Indian Contract Act. So Section 32 is about contingent contracts on happening of a certain event. Now, on a happening of a certain event, I mean, it does not say that you have to inform to the other side, but then that is what the contract provides for. Now, your agreement provides that you have to follow certain procedures when you are implementing the force majeure clause. So upon happening of a certain event, a contingent event, you have to inform the other side that this event has happened, and because of which now you are unable to perform the contract, or even in cases of frustration of contract, that the contract has now frustrated and therefore you are not in a position to perform the obligations as been provided for under the contract. So all of that is, the substantial law vis-a-vis the procedural law in terms of implementation of it. And therefore, there is a need for the notice to be sent to the other side with respect to the same. And if it is not done, then in that case, the other side is not cautioned with respect to your inability to perform your part of the obligation. And therefore, there is a need for the notice to be sent. What happens if the force majeure clause is not provided for in the contract? And in many contracts, as Atulji had also mentioned just before he left, that there are many contracts in which the force majeure clause is not provided for. So what happens? Are you going to be completely precluded from taking the excuse under the force majeure clause, or you would still be able to cover yourself under those kind of contracts? So even to understand that, we will have to go back into the history a little bit, because force majeure as a law also was not not an Indian law as such, and it has been taken its basis from the English law. So if you look at the old judgment, I think it was Taylor versus Bradford, which Taylor versus Caldwell, sorry, yeah, that was the one which had come in 1861, and that law in England was extremely rigid at that point of time. So it said that a contract, before that, in fact, it was a very rigid law. So you have either you have to, you have the force majeure, or you do not have the force majeure. If you have the force majeure in your agreement, then you have a safety. If you do not have it, then there is no safety net. So in fact, a contract had to be performed, notwithstanding the fact that it had become impossible of performance owing to the unforeseen event after it was made, which was not the fault of either of the parties to the contract. The rigidity of the common law, in which the absolute sanctity of the contract was upheld, was loosened somewhat by this decision of Taylor versus Caldwell. In this, it was held that if some unforeseen event has occurred during the performance of a contract, which makes it impossible of performance in the sense that the fundamental basis of the contract goes, then it need not be further performed, as insisting upon such performance would be unjust on the other side, who is unable to perform its part of the contract. Thereafter, this law, when it came into India, I think in the first time, I think it was discussed in Satyabrata Ghosh versus Mugniram Bangur in a lot of detail. Before that, we had a few judgments touching upon it, but I think in 1954, in this judgment, it was discussed in a lot of detail. So there, it was for the it was held that if it only it, in fact, it said that it is, in fact, it is an exhaustive law on the issue. There are so many points which have been covered in Satyabrata versus Mugniram Bangur, but one of this was that the word impossible has not been used in the section in the sense of physical or literal impossibility. So the performance of an act may not be literally impossible, but it may be impracticable and useless from the point of view of the object and purpose of the parties. So if an untoward event or a change of circumstance which totally upsets the the very foundation upon which the parties had entered into the agreement, it can be said that the promisor finds it impossible to do the act which he had promised to do. So if the contract itself, either impliedly, or now this is where the response will be for your question, that if the contract either itself, either impliedly or expressly, if it contains a term according to which performance would stand discharged under certain circumstances, the dissolution of the contract would take place under the terms of the contract itself, and such cases will have to be dealt with under the section 32 of the act. If, however, frustration is to take place, divorce the contract, it will be governed by section 56. I think that is where the whole law thereafter developed in many other judgments. So if you do not have a force majeure clause in your agreement, you may have difficulty in being able to take refuge under section 32. But so far as the frustration of contract is concerned, that is something which can be pleaded at any point of time under section 56 of the contract, that because of the scenario that you are in, or because of the circumstances that you are in, you are not in a position to continue to perform your part of the obligation, and therefore the contract has lost its essence and the contract is frustrated. So section 56 can be taken as a refuge even in those circumstances, irrespective of whether it is there in the agreement or not.
Sachin?
Yeah, very crisply explained by Shweta ji on this point. I was in a way when force majeure clause is not there. So what remedies one can adopt? So obviously, frustration remedy, which Shweta ji explicitly mentioned, contract the section 32 and section 56 is also there. Otherwise, we have seen recently in during this pandemic, there has been change in law. So government advisories were there, which have become the part of the force majeure. So Sundarji was explaining the MEP judgment. What has happened? There was an advisory and there was a change in law, and therefore the parties could take refuge under that change in law. So that is one. Second one would be frustration. Frustration can be affected with section 32 and section 56 depending upon the circumstances and the conditions of the contract, of the contractual obligation. Third would be there if there is some price reviews which are there. We have seen a lot of rent agreement, lease, leave and license agreement, and these they have both the parties have mutually decided and they have negotiated with the price. Or otherwise, the last remedy is the termination. If nothing is there and there is a termination clause, very well, if the contract is impossible to perform, then the contract stands terminated. So either you can take up the remedy, contractual remedy, or you have the statutory remedy. So it's up to the parties how they shape up, because how negotiation goes forward, and then they can take up either a statutory remedy or a contractual remedy.
Sundar?
I agree with Shweta ji and Sachin ji. If there is no stipulation in the contract of a force majeure, actually you can take recourse to section 56, invoke the doctrine of frustration. of course, you should understand that it should be something which is supervening, something which is beyond your control, so something which is beyond your control in terms of an impossibility or an illegality. But we should also understand that if you do not have a force majeure clause, there are going to be inherent difficulties that you will face. Because a lot of times there are going to be changed circumstances. So will any changed circumstance result in an impossibility or a supervening impossibility or a supervening illegality? It will not. It has to be something, as Shwetaji mentioned, something which really shakes the foundation, or something which goes to the root of the contract, which dissipates the contract itself. Only those kind of circumstances can invoke doctrine of frustration. There may be a lot of circumstances when the performance of the contract may become a little onerous, even during the COVID times. It may become onerous, like I mentioned in the Halliburton case. It may become a little onerous, but that by itself does not excuse the performance of the contract. For instance, a lot of cases that have been decided. Sachinji spoke about cases of lease, etc. I think the law is very clear there. If leases are situations wherein your doctrine of frustration will not apply, so you necessarily need to have a force majeure clause in leases. If you do not have the force majeure clauses, then the difficulty is going to be only going to be governed by Section 108 of the Transfer of Property Act, wherein the scope is pretty limited in terms of complete destruction of the property or the premises, etc. Otherwise, even though you may be not in a position to exercise or use the property, you will still have to be covered by the contractual terms. So it becomes very crucial to have clauses on force majeure. Another problem, which I think you will be concerned with force majeure. I'm sorry, there's a lot of disturbance. My nephews, I apologize. Sorry. When it's coming back, another instance I thought which I could give is another decision of the Bombay High Court, which was to do with invocation of bank guarantee. COVID had struck, and the other party, the respondent, wanted to invoke, not bank guarantee, invoke LCs. And the party, which was the buyer, tried to stop the party from invoking the LCs by saying it is a COVID situation. It is just after the lockdowns are being imposed, and therefore I should not, the LCs should not be encashed, etc. But the court said, no, this is not the case, because they said, one, it is only a relationship between you and the banker, etc. Nothing to do with the relationship between you and the supplier. They also said it was a case where supply of steel was still an essential service, so it was still permitted. So even therefore, in a COVID time, it is not that everything is not permitted. Services such as essential services still being permitted. Therefore, you cannot claim the invocation of force majeure. Even though there was a force majeure clause, you could still not invoke it. So therefore, it becomes all the more important that, as Shwetaji and Sachinji are saying, that have a better clause in terms of a force majeure. Number one, I think it was already touched upon by Sachinji, maybe have a more inclusive clauses in terms of a force majeure. Don't make it exhaustive, number one, to begin with. And also understand what are the importance of each of the contracts. Normally, when you look at boilerplate clauses, we really don't pay much attention to them because we have standard templates, etc. I think pandemic has really taught us, everyone, maybe the business and the lawyers, a good lesson that we should probably pay attention even to your regular boilerplate clauses, etc. So that is something that we should probably take care. But in terms of a remedy, yes, you do have a remedy of going back to Section 56 and claiming frustration. But courts are going to construe it very strictly and in a very narrow manner. That is what something they should be concerned about, at least from either a lawyer or a commercial perspective.
Shweta, which pointers we add in a force majeure definition to cover COVID-like scenarios?
Yeah, so the important aspect is, especially as Sundar had mentioned with respect to lease agreements. Now, lease agreements, unless and until you have a force majeure clause, including pandemic and epidemic kind of a situation also included in the lease agreement, you cannot seek a refuge under the force majeure clause of the lease agreement. So it is important to understand the nature of the agreement that we are entering into, and accordingly, not make it restrictive in terms of its interpretation. We keep the force majeure clause a little more encompassing and catch-all kind of a language, so that it is able to include a lot of scenarios that we are not able to, foresee now. I mean, pandemic happened in 1908, and then thereafter it did not happen. So who would have imagined that this kind of a scenario is going to arise after 100 years? So I would not even blame the lawyers who did not think about pandemic and epidemic as a force majeure. So it is important to have those kind of understandings. Look at our history also when we are talking about force majeure. What are the kind of circumstances which the world has undergone in the last 100 years to be able to make a more inclusive definition of force majeure. So that is what my suggestion would be, to make it more catch-all kind of a language while drafting, and put more care and attention to the force majeure clauses. It remains a boilerplate. Nobody even bothers to read for once what has been written in the
Right.
exact definition of force majeure.
Sachin, your view, please.
Absolutely.
Yes, Sachin.
Yes. So I will just mention. I will add actually to what Shweta ji has mentioned. Usually, we have seen force majeure was construed with act of God. Many people will say that, act of God. Then it got wider import. There are strikes, accidents, government action, war. All these things came in. So in general, when we see the force majeure clause, when it is explicitly mentioned, these kind of ingredients will be there in a force majeure clause. Sometimes what happens is people will put very vague in the extraordinary situation or similar situation. Now it is up to people to think that what those extraordinary situation would be, or what these similar situation will be. Now in such cases, when we have faced this pandemic, we realize that pandemic should also be a part of the force majeure. And in fact, you will not believe, in one of the agreement, so while there was a dispute between the landlord and the lessee, so there was a clause where pandemic was mentioned. I was very surprised to see that clause which was there, and then they were fighting, and they could save companies a lot of money, because that particular clause was there, and they send a notice. So they were fighting on the notice part only, that they should have sent a notice in the time. But I was very surprised. So therefore, while we are putting these clauses, we have a learning in front of us. Shweta rightly said, after 1908, nobody thought that this kind of standstill situation, which has hit the commercial sector the hardest, will come into picture. So therefore, as much as explicit we can think now, from there can be pandemic, epidemic, and other things also. So we should mention them, and we should not. In fact, we should analyze and check our past clauses also, where we have mentioned 4 clause, and we should revisit, and we should check it accordingly, so that in future we should not face such kind of problem.
Sundar.
I agree with completely Shwetaji and Sachinji. One, I think we should understand what should be the import of a force majeure in terms of the definition of a force majeure. We also understand the importance of having proper precedents for clauses, even though it may be boilerplate clauses, have proper precedents. Third point which I want to highlight is we should also understand whether we really want that wide a force majeure clause. You should first understand your side, whether you really want to have that wide a force majeure contract, or you don't want to have a force majeure contract. And if you want to have some kind of restrictions, etc., those are also issues that you need to look at. Because today we're only talking it from one side, saying that we should we include epidemics, pandemics, etc., as part of a force majeure. But there should also be conscious thinking depending upon the party. Let's say, for instance, there are essential service providers. Should we still then say that I would have pandemic or epidemic as a clause in the contract? So there has to be proper deliberation and negotiation. Parties are undertaking the review of contracts, etc., as to how do you really want to word the contract. Mainly because you had a pandemic situation today should not necessarily mean that you immediately import pandemic or epidemic immediately. So parties have to consider, because let's say, for instance, if I'm an essential service provider, I provide essential service, and then the other party claims pandemic because of the mention of the clause pandemic in a situation like this, or something else. So that has to be properly reviewed by parties before really putting it down. So that's why the importance, as Shwetaji, Sachinji said, about really reviewing your contracts properly, even though your regular boilerplates, etc., to see what is it that you really want in your contract. Maybe spend a little bit extra time on reviewing. That's probably what I wanted to share and highlight.
Great. So it was a great discussion, and thanks everyone for joining Success Channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Vijayji. Thank you, Shwetaji. Thank you, Sachinji. Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Good night.
Bye.